Howdy folks, welcome to module 3 of the Microsoft SC 300 course. Today's module, as you can see, is called Implement Access Management for Apps. As for the main sections we'll be diving into, there's a little bit more than usual. Today's module has got 7 sections that I'm going to be covering with you guys. The first one of these 7 is called Design and Implement Access Management for Apps. This will be followed by Design and Implement App Management Roles. Then we've got configure pre-integrated software as a service apps, followed by implement and configure consent settings. Then we've got monitor and audit access or sign on to Azure Active Directory integrated enterprise applications. And then the second last one is implement app registrations. And then the very last one would be configure application permissions. So there you have it, folks. As you can see, it's quite a mouthful. It's a lot of sections we're going to have to cover. The good news is these sections are not too big. I mean, each of them is going to be a little bit smaller. So the previous modules might have had less sections, but the sections are a little bit bigger. Now there's more of them, but they're shorter. We're going to go through them a little bit quicker. So that's the good news. You don't have to go and stress about it. Right, guys, so that's the agenda. If you haven't done it already, please do me a favor and the channel a favor by giving this video a like. If you do that, then YouTube's obviously going to go and push this out to more people, which means we'll be able to help more people out there that actually needs it. If you'd like to know when Module 4 for this course comes out or any of my other content, then maybe consider subscribing. Otherwise, you might miss it. Alright guys, so before we jump into that first section, just something I want to point out to you guys. The logo of my channel has changed and you will gradually over time start seeing a change in the videos as well. So just in case you're wondering, this is what the old logo looked like. You'll see that in pretty much all the videos on the channel. And this is what it's going to look like from now on going forward. So with that being said, if you look at the top right hand side where it says BurningIceTech, there we go. I just changed the logo. So from now on forward, going forward, that's what the logo is going to look like. All right, folks, just wanted to point that out. Let's go learn something. Alrighty folks, the first section we're going to be diving into is Design and Implement Access Management for Apps. And we're going to start things off with the topic of Azure Active Directory, or should I say Entra ID, since Microsoft has now renamed that. That's why I added it in pink there at the back. So even though it says Azure Active Directory, guys, we're going to be coming at this from an applications perspective because at the end of the day, I mean, this module is called Implement Access Management for Apps. So it's going to be about apps. Every topic in this module is going to circle the concept of apps. So when I say Azure Active Directory, yes, it's Azure Active Directory, but we're going to be talking about more specifically the applications in Azure Active Directory. So let's start things off with characteristics of Azure Active Directory. It has a gallery, for those of you who didn't know, that contains thousands of pre-integrated applications. You can actually even go run a search on that. So if you go to Google or a search engine of your choice and you go run a search for the application gallery of Azure Active Directory, you're going to see Google says it's got a gallery of thousands of pre-integrated applications. It is likely that many of the applications your organization uses are already in this gallery. You might not need to go and get your developer to go and create yourself one or go and upload one because chances are it's already in the application gallery, which is integrated in Azure Active Directory. I keep saying Azure Active Directory because that's how I'm used to it. I mean, the name just makes more sense to me. I'm not very keen on this new name that Microsoft has given the Azure Active Directory being Entra ID. It doesn't really make any sense. I mean, it is an Active Directory, and it is on Azure, so the name Azure Active Directory kind of sort of just makes more sense to me, but just know every time I say Azure Active Directory, I am in fact actually just talking about Entra ID. So yeah, the chances are, guys, the application you're looking for your organization or for your client, it's most likely already in the Azure Active Directory. I'm going to give you guys a bit of a tour on the Azure portal in just a second. So from time to time, I think we did this in module 1 as well. I'm going to flip back and forth between my presentation and the actual Azure portal just to show you guys certain things. So on that note, before we switch over, after an application has been added to Azure Active Directory tenant, you can go and do a couple of things. One of which is you can actually go and configure the properties of that application. Just because it's in the cloud or in the Azure portal doesn't mean you don't have the ability to go and configure the properties. You will in fact have that ability. You will have the ability to go and manage user access to this app with conditional access policies. I really love conditional access policies. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite things, but it's right up there. It's one of my all-time favorite things. That and data loss prevention policies, which is not a topic here today. You can also go and configure single sign-on, so users can sign into an app with their Azure Active Directory credentials. So at the end of the day, this will allow users to be more productive, so they spend less time, logging into this and logging into that. So they like using that as excuses not to be productive. So if they only have to log in once and then they can access everything they need to go and access, that obviously leaves them with more free time, which means they've got more time to obviously be productive and actually do their work. All right, so regarding this Azure Active Directory application gallery, or should I say Entra ID application gallery, let me just quickly flip over to the Azure portal and just show you where you can actually find this little bugger. So yeah, here we go.
A few moments later.
Alrighty, here we are on the Microsoft Azure portal, or should I say Azure. Everybody has a different way of pronouncing it, but at the end of the day, you know what I mean. So we need to find a way to get to the Microsoft Entra ID portal or section of this Azure portal. How you get there, that's up to you. There's a million and one ways. Obviously, one way would be to literally just go and click there. You can see there's a little tab or a button there that says Entra ID. That would obviously be the old Azure Active Directory. You can also go around and search for it here in the top, and there's a little search bar. Or you can go here to the left onto the navigation bar, scroll down until you find Microsoft Entra ID, and you can go and click on it that. So let me go click on that. Give it a second. You can see here it says default directory. So you know this is definitely going to be regarding directories. This is the old Azure Active Directory. They literally just went and changed this name now to Entra ID. It's a bit annoying, but yeah, what can we say? So what are we looking for? We're looking for the application gallery. Now, if you're just going to go and search for application gallery on its own, you might not actually find it because it's actually this section here. It says enterprise applications. That is the application gallery, folks. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Give it a second or so just to load. All right, seems like that's it. It's blank at the moment because I haven't done anything yet. So this is a completely blank Azure portal. I haven't done anything on it yet. So you're going to have to go and add an application or possibly more than one for your organization. And you can do that obviously here where it says new application. I'm going to go ahead and click on that button there. And there we go. Now, guys, here you're going to find a lot of applications. And me scrolling slowly like this doesn't actually do it justice. I mean, yes, we're seeing a whole bunch of applications and stuff you can go and make use of here. But remember, Microsoft says there is thousands of applications in this gallery. Here, on this front page, they're just showing you some of the most common things the average person or the average company would most likely want. But it doesn't mean that everything is on the front page. These are just featured applications, obviously. I see they make mention here of adding an application which might be on premises. You can, in fact, go and upload your own. They do mention application proxy here as well, and that actually is a topic later in this module if I'm not mistaken, so we'll see that as we progress in this video. So application proxy is a means or a way for you to allow people that's not actually on premises to access things like applications. These could be staff members of yours or users of yours that's just working from somewhere else. Maybe they're working from home because that's the way people do things these days. Maybe it's a contractor or a consultant working someplace remotely and they would like to access something in your organization. Whatever the situation might be, application proxy allows you to give those people access outside your organization to applications that reside on premises. They also mention other things here, of course, as on-premise application provisioning and stuff. So they do have that, but it's not a topic here right now. Once again, guys, this list is very short at the moment. So the application you're looking for, whatever it might be, you are most likely going to have to go around and search for it here. And then from there, you will obviously get prompted with a couple of suggestions and you can just take it from there. You can also go and create your own application here, as you guys can see. So that's pretty nifty. So yeah, that is the application gallery on the Microsoft Entra ID. So it's not just on the Azure portal, guys. The first time I went looking for this little bugger, I couldn't find it because I went and looked on the normal Azure portal. I actually went here to the left-hand side. I was digging in a navigation pane. I couldn't see anything. It says application gallery. At some point, I actually even thought it was here, but that's just services. That's not necessarily applications. So if I go here to all services, these are not necessarily applications. These are all kinds of other things. So I actually thought it was in there at some point. At some point, I thought it might be in there. I went to the navigation menu here on the left. I couldn't find it for the life of me. I actually even ran a search here for application gallery. Misspelling it now. But you can see it doesn't even pop up with application gallery. It mentions a few other things regarding applications. I mean, application insights and all kinds of other things here. But that's not exactly what we're looking for. So I thought to myself, where the cheese is this thing? And it turns out, back in the day when I searched for this, you have to actually go to the Azure Active Directory, which is now called Entra ID. You go there, and from there, you'll find it here in this blade. So this is not a navigation menu, this is called a blade. And there it is, you just go to Enterprise Applications, and you'll of course find it there. All right, let's go back to the presentation. Alrighty, folks, back we are. I'm going to move into the second main section we had listed in the beginning in the agenda, and that is design and implement app management roles. Here we're going to talk about delegate application creation and management. And the first thing here I'll mention is by restricting who can create applications and manage them. So who can create applications and manage the applications they create? That's what I mean by that one. The second one is by assigning one or more owners to an application. So assigning one or more owners to an application, this is a simple way to grant someone the ability to manage all aspects of Azure Active Directory configuration for a specific application. The third one I'll mention for you folks is by assigning a built-in administrative role that grants access to manage configuration in Azure Active Directory for all applications. By assigning a built-in administrative role that grants access to manage configuration in Azure Active Directory for all applications. So this is the recommended way to grant IT experts access to manage broad application configuration permissions without granting access to manage other parts of Azure Active Directory not related to application configuration. So there is that. And then the fourth and the last one I'll list here for you folks is by creating a custom role, defining specific permissions, and of course assigning it. So this is creating a custom role, defining specific permissions, and assigning it to someone either to the scope of a single application as a limited owner or at the directory scope as a limited administrator. And then lastly, guys, before we switch over, it is important to consider granting access using one of the above methods for two reasons. The first one is delegating the ability to perform administrative tasks reduces the global administrator overhead, so it's going to be a lot less work for your administrators, which very well will probably include yourself. And then secondly, using limited permissions improves security posture and reduces the potential for unauthorized access. So good old-fashioned least privilege. You never give someone or something more access or privilege than what they need to achieve a task or a goal. So it's not just because we don't trust people, it's also because in the event of someone's account, of course, getting compromised. Alrighty, the next topic is built-in application roles. Now, folks, if you didn't know, Azure Active Directory, or should I say Entra ID, has a set of built-in admin roles for granting access to manage configuration in Azure Active Directory for all applications. These roles are the recommended way to grant IT experts access to manage broad application configuration permissions without granting access to manage other parts of Azure Active Directory not related to application configuration. Now, there's two roles I'm going to list for you guys. The first one is called Application Administrator. Now, this one includes the ability to manage all aspects of enterprise applications, including registrations and application proxy settings. The other built-in role is called Cloud Application Administrator. And this one includes the ability to manage most aspects of enterprise applications, but it does exclude the ability to manage application proxy settings. All right, so once again, if we look at the first one there, guys, the first one we listed, which was application administrator. So just to reinforce on this, users in that role can create and manage all aspects of enterprise applications, application registrations, and application proxy settings. And this role also grants the ability to consent to delegated permissions and application permissions, excluding Microsoft Graph. Users assigned this role are not added as owners when creating new applications. And if we look at the second one again, which was Cloud Administrator, users in that role have the same permissions as Application Administrator role, excluding the ability to manage application proxy. Users assigned to this role are not added as owners when creating new application registrations or enterprise applications. All right, folks, let's move on to the third main section, configure pre-integrated software as a service application. So we're going to talk about configuring app properties. There's 3 properties we can go ahead and configure. The first of which is enabled for users to sign in. So we're going to look a little bit deeper into this in just a second, but the first one is enabled for users to sign in. So with that one, it determines whether users assigned to the application can actually sign in. If it's not enabled, users cannot sign into the application. The second property is user assignment required. Now, if you've got that one, it determines whether users who are assigned to the application can actually sign in if need be. And then the third app property is visible to users. Now, that one, if it's assigned to users or if it's turned on, it determines whether users can actually see the assigned application in the My Apps or the Microsoft 365 App Launcher. So that last one, which basically says visible to users, if you go and turn that one off, it doesn't mean users can't access the application. It does not mean they can't sign in. They'll still be able to access it. They'll still be able to sign in. They just won't be able to see it, for that matter. Now, to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to show you guys a little bit of a table here. Now, with this table, I'm showing you guys the 3 options can be toggled independently of each other, just in case you didn't know. And the resulting behavior is not always obvious, guys. So look at the table. This table should help you, a little bit, with regards to understanding it. So if you look at this table, you'll see on the left-hand side, it says yes and yes for enable for users to sign in. It says under user assignment required, both of them says yes. The only difference here between these 2 columns is where it says visible to users, the one says yes, the other one says no. If you look at way on the right, the resulting behavior, you'll see that the behavior is ever so slightly different. So where it says visible to users, if you look at the behavior on the right next to it, it says assigned users can see the app and sign in, because it does say yes, yes for those things. But it does say unassigned users see the app and cannot sign in. So unassigned users, they will be able to see it, but they won't be able to sign in. You have to be able to sign in. And if you look at the column below that where it says no to visible to users, it says assigned users cannot see the app, but they can sign in. Unassigned users cannot see the app and cannot sign in. So the behavior is ever so slightly different, as you guys can see there. Now, still on the topic of configuring app properties, let me just switch over here. I want to show you guys, you can actually go and change a whole bunch of things regarding the app properties. So when we were on the Azure portal earlier, guys, you would remember we went to the Azure Active Directory, we clicked on Enterprise Applications, which is the application gallery that the Microsoft refers to. Now, once you eventually have an application there, which I don't at the moment, you guys saw mine was blank, but we'll go and add one in just a moment so you can see what it looks like. Once you've got an application there, on the left hand side in that blade, you guys can see there's a screenshot there. In the blade, if you click on properties, you'll be able to change all kinds of aspects there. You can change the logo. You can see there they're changing the logo. And I mean, here, if I show you guys this picture, you can see you can also go and add notes, just to name a few. There's many other things you can also go and configure. So with that being said, just to show you how this would actually look like currently, because these screenshots are sometimes outdated, let me just quickly switch over to the portal and show you how we do this.
A few moments later.
All right, so back on the Azure portal we are. I'm going to go straight to Microsoft Entra ID. I'm going to go straight to the application gallery, which is called Enterprise Applications. I'm going to click on that. And here, as you guys can see, I currently have no applications. If I had one, I could literally just go click on it, but I don't. So I'm going to just go and add a random application. In that screenshot in my presentation, I saw it said GitHub. So let's just go run a search for that. GitHub. You can actually see me searching, and you can see it pops up with a whole bunch of things. I literally just typed in one word there, and look at how many things actually pops up here. So they really mean it when they say there's thousands of applications to go and choose from. I'm literally just going to click on the first thing that pops up here. There we go. Because I just want to show you can actually change the logo, that logo there if need be. And you can go and add notes and many other things if need be. So let's click on that. I'm going to give it a fake name here. Let's just say BurningIceTech dash test because it's a test. Create. Give it a couple of moments. I'm going to fast forward here until it's done.
One eternity later.
All right, there we go. That took about 20-30 seconds, I would say, on my side. It's probably not going to be the same for you guys as well. So there we are. I've made my fake pretend application. And then if you remember correctly in the screenshot, we had to go to properties because the topic is application properties. So we're going to go to properties, hence the name, the topics. And there you can see we can actually change the logo. You can change the name later on if need be. Bunch of other stuff you can go and change. And of course, there at the bottom is the notes that you guys saw on the screenshot as well. So you can actually go and change or add notes if need be as well. Lots of other things you can also go and change here. Right, let us go back to the presentation. Right, moving into another main section, implement and configure consent settings. All right, so what are consent settings, you ask? Well, before an application can access the organization's data, a user must grant the application permissions to actually do so. Different permissions allow different levels of access, much like you would expect. And by default, folks, all users can consent to applications for permissions that do not require administrator consent. For example, by default, a user can consent to allow an app to access their mailbox. However, they cannot consent to allow an app unfettered access to read and write to all files in your organization. By allowing users to grant apps access to data, users can easily acquire useful applications and be productive. However, in some situations, guys, this configuration can represent a risk if it is not carefully monitored and controlled, so you might want to keep that in mind if you're considering using this one, folks. And of course, you can see there's a picture for you guys as well as to more or less what this would look like, so kind of like an idea. Now you kind of have an idea what it would look like. Now, as for user consent settings, we've got 4. The first one, guys, is disable user consent. Users cannot grant permissions to applications. I think you would be able to guess that if you look at the name and it says disable user consent. So users can actually still continue to sign into apps that they had previously consented to or that are consented to by an administrator on their behalf. But they will not be allowed to consent to new permissions or to new apps on their own. Only users who have been granted a directory role that includes the permission to grant consent will be able to consent to new apps from this point forward. The second option, guys, is users can consent to apps from verified publishers. So users can only consent to apps that were published by a verified publisher. So all users can only consent to apps that were published by a verified publisher and apps that are registered in your tenant. Users can only consent to the permissions you have classified as low impact. You must classify permissions to choose which permissions users are allowed to consent to, of course. The third option, guys, is users can consent to all apps. So if this one, users can consent to any permission. This option allows all users to consent to any permission that does not require administrator consent for any application. And the fourth and the last one, guys, is custom app consent policy. Users can consent to custom app consent policies. So for even more options over the conditions governing when users consent, you can go ahead and you can go and create what we call custom app consent policies and configure those to apply for user consent. Right, folks, moving on. Application proxy. This is something I did briefly mention earlier when we were actually on the Azure portal. I told you I think it's somewhere in this module, and here it is. So the application proxy, as I mentioned briefly earlier, allows people outside your environment, in other words, these folks are not on premises, to access applications that might otherwise be on premises. So this is quite a handy feature, as you can imagine, with most of our employees and staff no longer working, from the office these days. And also since many companies out there have some sort of contractors, consultants, and what have you that are not necessarily on premises, but they may or may not need to access applications that actually are on premises. But generally speaking, this is something I see us using for our own staff, not so much for people outside the company environment. So application proxy is a feature of Azure Active Directory that enables users to access on-premises web applications from a remote client, being something like a laptop, desktop, tablet, or phone, of course. If you look at the diagram we've got in front of us, it's not the prettiest diagram, but it does simplify things. So this diagram shows how Azure Active Directory, or once again, should I say Entra ID, and the application proxy work together to provide single sign-on to on-premises applications. So if you look at the diagram, step 1. After the user has accessed the application through an endpoint, being your laptop or desktop or whatever, the user is directed to the Azure Active Directory sign-in page. He or she will have to go and provide obviously the company details and log in there. After the successful sign-in, Azure Active Directory sends a token to the user's client device, much like you would receive on premises if you authenticate there. Step 3, the client sends that token as just received to the application proxy service, which retrieves the user principal name and the security principal name from that token. The application proxy then sends the request to the application proxy connector. Step 4, if you have configured single sign-on, the connector performs any additional authentication required on behalf of said user. And then step 5, the connector sends the request to the on-premises application. And then lastly, folks, step 6, the response is sent through the connector and the application proxy service to the user. So yeah, the picture looks very complicated at first glance, but if you take a moment, sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and you kind of squint your eyes, you'll see, okay, it's not really that complicated. Don't judge a book by its cover, as the saying goes. All right, moving on to single sign-on for software as a service apps. All right, so with this topic, guys, you can use Azure Active Directory as your identity system for just about any app these days. Many apps are already pre-configured and can be set up with minimal effort. These pre-configured apps are published in the Azure Active Directory app gallery, which we've seen now. It's first of all no longer called Azure Active Directory, it's called Entra ID. And the app gallery is not called app gallery, it's called enterprise applications. So it's going to be Entra ID enterprise applications. That's the actual name there. And in case you guys didn't know, you can also manually configure most apps for single sign-on if they aren't already in the gallery. Azure Active Directory provides several single sign-on options that you guys can go and choose from. The first of which is SAML based single sign-on, and then also OIDC based single sign-on. All right, moving on to application user provisioning. Alrighty, folks. First of all, in Azure Active Directory, the term app provisioning, it refers to automatically creating user identities and roles in the cloud, more specifically software as a service applications that users need access to. Now, in addition to creating user identities, automatic provisioning also includes the maintenance and removal of user identities as status or roles change. A common scenario is provisioning an Azure Active Directory user into applications like, for example, Dropbox, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and of course, much, much more. This feature, guys, it lets you do some of the following actions. I'm going to list a couple for you guys. It lets you automate provisioning. So if you don't know what that is, it automatically creates new accounts in the right systems for new people when they join a team or an organization. It also allows you to automate deprovisioning, basically the exact opposite. So it automatically deactivates accounts in the right systems when people leave a team or an organization. It also allows you to synchronize data between systems. So in other words, ensure that the identities in the apps and systems are kept up to date based on changes in the directory or the human resources system. It also allows you to provision groups. So this would be provisioning groups to applications that support them, of course. It allows you to govern access. So, in other words, monitor and audit who has been provisioned into applications. It allows you to seamlessly deploy in brownfield scenarios. In other words, match existing identities between systems and allow for easy integration even when users already exist in the target system. It allows you to use rich customization if you'd like to make use of that. So, in other words, take advantage of customizable attribute mappings that define what user data should flow from the source system to the target system. And then, lastly, guys, the last point I'll mention here, guys, it also allows you to get alerts for critical events. So, in other words, provisioning service provider alerts for critical events and allows for log analytics integration where you can define custom alerts to suit your business needs. Okay, folks, let's move on to the next main section, monitor and audit access or sign on to Azure Active Directory integrated enterprise application. So you can see we're still in that same section. This pretty much this whole freaking module, this whole module is all about applications, specifically enterprise applications, which means we're talking about the app gallery you would find on Azure Active Directory, or as some people call it, Entra ID. And in a moment, I'm going to give you guys a couple of screenshots again, which is once again going to be in that exact same vicinity on the portal. It's just going to be on a different tab on that portal. Alrighty, so on that note, we are now talking about usage and insights report. So that's just another tab you would find on the portal. So there's a screenshot for you guys. Please take this screenshot of some salt. I'll show you in a moment what it looks like at the moment. So the moment that little list we see there in the screenshot is actually a little bit longer because Microsoft, you know how they are. They're continuously adding more stuff and removing stuff and renaming stuff, but they like to go and add stuff. So before I switch over to the portal, just to show you where it actually is, I don't think I need to show you what it does because when the name tells you it's usage and insights for crying out loud. So it's analytics and it's going to give you graphs and all that. Something worth noting, you do need to have the right license to be able to do that. So I think you need to have like a P1 or a P2. Otherwise, if you go click there, it's just going to give you an error. I might as well do that just to see if I get the error so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So with regards to this usage and insights report, what are the top used applications in your organization? That's one of the things you'll be able to see. So if you need to know, or your organization or your client's organization needs to know what the top used applications are in their respective environment, this is actually one way you can go and do that. You can actually go and check and see, okay, you know what? This application and that application seems to be very popular and very highly used. You can also see what applications have the most failed sign-ins, if that's the kind of thing you would like to know. Might not be applicable to all companies, but if you need to know that, you're able to see that. And then you can also see what are the top sign-in errors for each application. So once again, probably not something all companies want to see, but if you do need to see that for some weird reason, it is there. You can see it, obviously, of course, assuming you can find this tab. The last time I checked, it's still there. And more importantly, assuming you've got the right license. So on that note, let me just very briefly switch over to the portal and just show you that this list actually is a little bit longer. And it's probably going to give me an error if I actually click on that tab. So please memorize this little picture on the right so you can see that it actually is longer once I switch over to the portal. So switching over.
A few moments later.
All right, folks, here we are back on the Azure portal. As you can see, I'm still under Enterprise Applications. I'm currently on the top tab, which is the Overview tab, and earlier we were also here in the Properties tab. And there's quite a few tabs here. I mean, if you look at it, you'll see there's Owners and Roles and Administrators. So there you'll probably find those built-in administrators roles we spoke of earlier. And, pretty much everything we've been speaking about this in this video, for that matter, you'll find them on these various tabs. I mean, they've even got conditional access here. I mean, check that out. So if you remember that screenshot I just showed you in my presentation, you would remember that this list was heck of a lot smaller, heck of a lot shorter. And more or less in this area where mine says conditional access and permissions here on the left, there's one that said usage and insights. And yet we don't see it. We actually need to scroll down now on the actual portal. So you can see this list clearly has actually gotten bigger over time. So there's the usage and insights. Mine is most likely going to give me an error if I click on that because I don't have the right license, at least not yet. I just need to go and click on that. This is a blank tenant for the most part, so I'm going to go click on that. Just give it a moment. Yep, there we go. Access denied. You do not have access. Why? They say to see sign-in data, upgrade your organization subscription to include the ID, the P1 or the P2 here. So I don't have the right license. I've got a free Entra license here at the moment. So I just need to go, and I think there's a trial available for these, if I'm not mistaken. It's going to take too long now for me to go and create that, but there is actually a trial, I believe, that you can go and use for those. And that will obviously give you access to the usage and insights. Very useful function to have that I almost guarantee you're going to use. You need to have this in your environment, guys. And I definitely encourage you to go and make use of that. All right, let's go back to the old presentation. Okay, folks, next up we've got audit logs. So I think most of us know what auditing logs are because this is something you'll find in a lot of softwares and platforms these days. And obviously the same goes for Azure and more specifically for enterprise applications. So these are records of system activities for compliance. There's a picture for you guys at the bottom. If I go back to my portal now, which I'm not going to do just yet, but if I were to go back to my portal, mine's probably going to be blank because mine is a blank tenant. There's nothing going on. So the whole idea is it's supposed to show you logs of things that's been happening. And with mine being blank, there's obviously nobody on it and nothing has been happening on it. So you're not going to see anything on mine. All I can show you is where one would find this thing called audit logs. So yeah, it's records of system activities for compliance. The date and time of the occurrence is one thing it'll show you. As you can see there on the left in the screenshot, that's why I've got the screenshot. It shows you the service that logged the occurrence. It will show you the category and the name of the activity. In other words, what. It shows you the status of the activity, which would in other words be the success or failure. It shows you the target. And lastly, folks, it shows you the initiator or actor. So in other words, who of an activity. So looking at that screenshot at the bottom there, guys, that's pretty much everything you need to know regarding audit logs. I'm just going to very briefly once again switch over to the portal so you can see where it is. So here we go.
A few moments later.
So as you can see, this is where we were earlier. Earlier we were talking about usage and insights. So audit logs, that would be also on the left. Obviously everything is in this blade on the left, and you can see there it is, audit logs. So everything we've been talking about for the most part, is either one of these tabs or underneath one of these tabs, subcategory if you want to call it that. And yeah, audit logs, there it is. If I click on mine, I believe mine's going to be blank. I did click on it. Oh no, I did not. Let me just click on that. Give it a moment. And you can see mine's blank. So at the moment mine is blank because, well, I haven't done anything in my environment yet. I literally just made this application in the beginning of this video, as you guys remember. So it's blank, obviously. All right, going back to the presentation. All right, folks, I think it's pretty safe to assume now that you'll be able to find this on your own. So all you need to do is you just go to your company's Azure portal. You go to the Azure Active Directory, which is now called Entra ID. And then you go to Enterprise Applications, and then you go to Audit Logs. So on that note, here's a picture that shows you pretty much just what I said. You can see that's a screenshot. It's an old screenshot, but it's pretty much the exact same path we took. You just would have noticed the path we took obviously has way more tabs now. So Enterprise Application Audit Logs, Application-Based Audit Logs. So what applications have been added or updated is one thing you can see. What applications have been removed? Has a service principal for an application changed? Have the names of applications been changed? And or who gave consent to an application? These are all just some of the things one can actually see there. Right, folks, moving into the next main section, implement app registration. So yeah, let's start off with why do applications integrate with Azure Active Directory? So you add applications to your Azure Active Directory, which is now Entra ID, to leverage one or more of the services it provides, which includes, and now I'm going to give you guys a bit of a list. I think I'm going to list about 8 if I remember correctly. So the first thing it includes is application, authentication, and authorization. So to prove you are who you claim to be and to check what kind of privilege you've got, it includes user authentication and authorization. Oh yeah, okay. So the second one is actually to prove you are who you claim to be and what privilege you've got. The first one is for applications. And then the third one is single sign-on using federation or password. Fourth one is user provisioning and synchronization. Fifth one, OAuth authorization services, application publishing and proxy. directory schema, extension attributes, and of course, role-based access control. So these are why applications integrate with your Active Directory, or at least some of the reasons why applications integrate with Azure Active Directory. It's obviously not limited to just those, but those are the most common, the most widely known reasons, as you can imagine. All right, so still kind of on the same topic, who has permissions to add applications to my Azure Active Directory instance? All right, folks, so by default, all users in your directory have rights to register application objects they are developing, and they have discretion over which applications they share or give access to their organizational data through consent. And when the first user in your directory signs into an application and grants consent, that will create a service principal in your tenant, in case you didn't know. Otherwise, the consent grant information will be stored on the existing service principal. So allowing users to register and consent to applications might initially sound concerning to you guys, but keep the following in mind. Applications have been able to leverage Windows Server Active Directory for user authentication for many years without requiring the application to be registered or recorded in a directory. Now the organization will have improved visibility to exactly how many applications are using the directory and for what purpose. So we've been doing this all along. It's just now you're going to have more of an idea of what the heck is actually going on in your environment. So you're going to have more insights. More transparency, I think, is a word we could probably use here. Delegating these responsibilities to users negates the need for an admin-driven application registration and publishing process. With Active Directory Federation services, an admin likely had to add an application as a relying party on behalf of the developers. Now developers can self-service them. Also, guys, users signing into applications using their organizational accounts for business purposes is a good thing. If they subsequently leave the organization, they will automatically lose access to their account in the application they were using. Pretty cool, right? Having a record of what data was shared with which application is also a good thing. Data is more transportable than ever, and it's useful to have a clear record of who shared what data with which applications, because then you can go and backtrack, and if someone did something not so nice, you can see, aha, it was this weasel. Oh, and API owners who use Azure AD for OAuth decide exactly what permissions users are able to grant to applications and which permissions require an admin to actually agree to. Only admins can consent to larger scopes and more significant permissions, while users' consent is scoped to, well, users' own data and capabilities, of course. And lastly, guys, when a user adds or allows an application to access their data, the event can, of course, be audited. Don't you love that? You can view the audit reports within the Azure portal to determine how an application was added to the directory, just like I showed you guys earlier. So if you go there earlier, where I showed you guys earlier, assuming you've got the right license and the right privilege, you'll be able to see exactly who, what, where, when, and why. Pretty cool, right? All right, moving on to another main section. We're almost at the end of this module, so hang in there, guys. If you're still watching this video at this point in time, we're almost at the end, guys. So if you're still watching the video at this point in time, I think we're probably over the 40-minute or 50-minute mark by now. There's a code word you can go and type in the comments down below. It is bunny rabbits have eaten my shoes. This is just a fun little internal game. You don't have to do this, but if you want to play this game, it's to confuse the people that's just skimming the video. You get guys that will click on the video for like a couple of seconds, and if they do that, they will have no idea what these comments are about. But for those of you that actually watch the full module, you'll obviously know why there's random comments in a comment section that talks about bunnies that's eating shoes. So you can go talk about bunnies eating your shoes. You can go and be creative about it. You know, maybe change it up a little bit. As long as you just keep to the YouTube police rules, you know, obviously censor yourself, no swearing and all that, but you can be creative, you can be funny in the comment section about that. Alternatively, if you've got questions about this module, anything that was discussed in this module, you can also go and ask that in the comment section down below. And obviously, remember to give this video a like if you guys haven't done that already. All right, moving on to the next main section, configure application permissions. Okay, so first of all, in the section, let's get right to it. Application permissions. So applications that integrate with Microsoft Identity Platform follow an authorization model that gives users and administrators control over how data can be accessed. Permissions for tasks like these can be controlled, guys. So one of the first things you can do is read a user's calendar. That's just one of them. You can also go and write to a user's calendar if need be, and you can go and send mail as if you are a user. So these are just examples. It's obviously not limited to that. These are just good examples that you guys can probably relate to. So by defining these types of permissions, the resource has fine-grained control over its data and how API functionality is actually exposed. A third-party app can request these permissions from users and administrators who must approve the request before the app can access data or act on a user's behalf. And then, guys, the last topic in this module. Yes, we finally made it to the end. Permissions and consent. And basically, I'm just going to mention the different kinds of permission types you get. The first of which is delegated permissions. That's when you basically pass on permissions to someone else. At the end of the day, we know we're just one man. You cannot do everything yourself. And companies are quite large. So you're going to have to get some help. And you're going to have to pass on some permissions to some other people from time to time. And sometimes it's just needed. Never mind a company being too big or anything. So, with regards to delegated permissions, these are used by apps that have a signed-in user present, and either the user or an administrator consents to the permissions that the app requests. The other type of permission you get is application permissions. So these are used by apps that run without a signed-in user present, and only an administrator can consent to application permissions. So this is just something to keep in mind. So some delegated permissions can be consented to by non-administrative users, but some higher privilege permissions require administrator consent. So if you want to learn more about which administrator roles can consent to delegated permissions, please go and check out the administrator role permissions in Azure Active Directory, which, well, it's called Entra ID now, of course. Alright folks, finally we've made it to the end of the video. Before you disappear on me, please remember to give this video a quick like just before you bounce off to the next module or somewhere else on YouTube. Maybe you want to go and watch a Mr. Beast video, so just give this video a like before you disappear on me. And if you'd like to know when Module 4 comes out or any of my other content, maybe consider subscribing as well to the channel, guys. And I just want to give a quick shout out and thank you to the sponsors of this channel. There's quite a few. So for those of you clicking on the thanks button below the videos, I know sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. But when and if YouTube decides to leave it there, thank you to all of you guys. Thank you to those of you buying me milkshakes and coffee. The links is in the video description down below. And a shout out and a thank you to the Patreons of this channel, all the Patreon supporters. Thank you, every one of you guys. I appreciate you. And then also thank you to all the PayPal sponsors that's been giving donations in the background as well. I appreciate all of you guys. Right, guys, if you would like to make a donation yourself or support the channel in some sort of way, you can find all of that information in the video description down below. And speaking of the video description down below, the channel does have a Discord server as well. So if you don't know about it already, in the video description down below, it's literally way at the bottom of the description. There's a Discord server link. I have a Discord server. It's called Free IT Training. There's other IT trainers in there. There's lots of IT experts in there. And of course, there is many people, hundreds of people, if not thousands of people in there that's studying IT courses just like this one. So you can go and study with other people. If you've got questions, you can ask them. They can ask you. I mean, even I'm on that server. So if I am online and I see your question, even I might actually answer your question from time to time. Alright guys, please stay tuned for Module 4 of the Microsoft SC 300 course.